The chapel bells were still ringing when Elena Hartwell kicked off her satin shoes and ran. Her wedding dress caught on the iron gate behind the cathedral, tearing a long gash up the hem. She didn't stop. Behind her, voices erupted in confusion. Someone shouted her name. She heard Vincent Mallory's roar of rage cut through the September afternoon like a blade. She'd left him standing at the altar, surrounded by 300 witnesses. Left him there with his perfect smile frozen, his hands still extended, waiting for a bride who would never come. Elena's lungs burned as she sprinted down the cobblestone alley. The corset beneath her dress felt like iron bands crushing her ribs. Her dark hair tumbled from its pins, spilling across her shoulders. She clutched the small leather journal hidden in her bodice. The only thing that mattered now. The only thing worth dying for. Because Vincent would kill her for running, just like he killed her brother. She reached the stable where she'd hidden the horse that morning. Her hands shook as she fumbled with the saddle, her fingers clumsy in their white lace gloves. The mare shifted nervously, sensing her panic. "Come on," Elena whispered. "Please." Footsteps pounded in the distance. Men's voices calling orders. Vincent had sent his people after her already. Of course he had. Vincent Mallory didn't lose things that belonged to him. She swung into the saddle, her wedding dress bunching awkwardly around her legs. The journal pressed against her heart like a stone. Inside those pages, her brother Daniel had written everything. Every forged signature, every bribed official, every lie Vincent had told to steal Lakota land for his railroad. Daniel had discovered the truth 3 weeks ago. Vincent had him killed. 2 days later, they called it an accident. A fall from his horse during a morning ride. But Elena had found the journal hidden in Daniel's study, and she knew what her fiancé really was. She dug her heels into the mare's flanks and burst from the stable into the street. Behind her, a man shouted. A gunshot cracked against bricks somewhere to her left. Elena leaned low over the horse's neck and rode hard toward the city limits, toward the vast emptiness of Dakota Territory. She had no plan beyond running, no destination except the way. The wind tore at her veil, ripping it free. It floated behind her like a white flag of surrender before disappearing into the dust. But Elena Hartwell wasn't surrendering. She was going to survive long enough to make Vincent Mallory pay for what he'd done, even if it killed her. Elena rode for 3 days straight, stopping only when the mare couldn't go further. She slept in ravines and drank from streams, her white wedding dress now brown with dust and torn beyond recognition. The Dakota plains stretched endlessly in every direction, beautiful and merciless. On the 4th morning, she woke to find herself surrounded. 6 Lakota warriors sat on their horses in a silent circle around her camp. They hadn't made a sound. Elena's breath caught in her throat as she slowly sat up, her hand instinctively moving toward the journal hidden in her dress. The nearest warrior, young with sharp eyes and a scar across his cheek, spoke in English. "You are far from your people." "I have no people," Elena said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "Not anymore." The warrior studied her ruined dress, her tangled hair, the exhaustion carved into her face. "Come." They brought her to their village by midday. Women and children emerged from lodges to stare at the white woman in the strange torn garment. An elder with gray braids and eyes like flint approached. He wore the bearing of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I am Chief Takoda," he said. His English was precise, careful. "Why do you trespass on our land?" Elena met his gaze. Something in his face reminded her of her father. Stern but not cruel. "I'm running from a man who wants me dead. I didn't know where else to go." "Many white men want many things dead," Takoda said. "Why should we involve ourselves in your troubles?" Before Elena could answer, a young woman stepped forward. She was perhaps 20, with intelligent eyes and her father's commanding presence. "She carries something," the woman said, gesturing to Elena's bodice. "Something she protects more than her own life." Elena's hand moved to the journal. Chief Takoda noticed. "My daughter Winona sees clearly," he said. "What is it you hide?" Elena hesitated. Then slowly, she withdrew the leather journal. "Proof that the man hunting me plans to destroy your people." The words hung in the air like smoke. Takoda's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Explain." "His name is Vincent Mallory. He owns the Continental Railroad Company. This journal belonged to my brother. He was Mallory's attorney until he discovered what Mallory was planning. Elena's voice cracked. Mallory is forging land deeds and bribing federal agents to claim this territory belongs to the government. He plans to run his railroad straight through your hunting grounds. When you resist, he'll use it as justification for removal. Or worse, your brother discovered this and told you? Winona asked. My brother discovered this and was murdered for it, Elena said, 3 weeks ago. They made it look like an accident. Chief Takoda was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke in Lakota to his warriors. The young scarred warrior, Shaden, Elena would later learn, argued briefly before nodding and departing. You will stay here, Dakota said, until I decide what is truth and what is deception. Elena sighed with relief. Thank you. Do not thank me yet, the chief said. If you lie, you will wish you had faced this Mallory instead. 2 days passed. Winona brought Elena food and clean clothes, a simple buckskin dress that fit better than any corset ever had. The Lakota woman was cautious but curious, asking questions about the white world, about railroads and cities, and why a woman would marry a man like Mallory. I didn't know what he was, Elena admitted. They sat outside Winona's lodge watching children play. He was charming, generous. My father approved of the match. After Daniel died, I thought Mary and Vincent would help me feel less alone. She laughed bitterly. Then I found the journal. You were brave to run, Winona said. I was desperate, Elena corrected. Bravery had nothing to do with it. On the third day, riders approached the village. Elena recognized the lead man immediately, Marcus Webb, Mallory's best tracker, tall and weathered, with eyes that missed nothing. Chief Takoda met them at the village edge. Elena stood behind him, her heart hammering. Chief Takoda, Marcus said, dismounting. I'm looking for a woman. White, dark hair, about 25 years old. She's wearing a wedding dress. She's confused, possibly dangerous to herself. Her family is very worried. Worried, Takoda repeated flatly. Her fiancé, Vincent Mallory, sent me personally to ensure her safe return. Marcus's hand rested on his pistol. He's offering $1,000 for information leading to her recovery. We do not want his money. Marcus's jaw tightened. With respect, Chief, this woman is not your concern. She's mentally unstable. She ran from her own wedding. She needs medical care. Not. She has claimed sanctuary, Takoda interrupted. Under our law, she is protected. Your law doesn't apply to white citizens. It applies to anyone who asks for protection on Lakota land. Takoda's voice was stone. She stays until I release her. Tell Mallory this. Marcus stared at the chief for a long moment. Then his eyes found Elena standing behind him. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, calculation, maybe even sympathy. Mr. Mallory won't accept that answer, Marcus said quietly. Then Mr. Mallory can come speak to me himself, Takoda replied. Marcus nodded slowly. He mounted his horse, but before leaving, he looked at Elena one more time. He'll come, he said, and he won't come alone. As the riders disappeared over the horizon, Elena felt Winona's hand on her shoulder. Now, the Lakota woman said, you tell my father everything in that journal, every word. Because when Mallory comes, we need to know exactly what kind of monster we're facing. Elena opened the journal to the first page, and she told them everything. Chief Takoda listened in silence as Elena read from her brother's journal. The other elders gathered around the central fire, their faces grave. Winona translated for those who didn't speak English, and with each revelation, the anger in the lodge grew thicker. June 7th, Elena read, Mallory met with Agent Harrison at the federal land office. Harrison accepted $5,000 to backdate territorial surveys, placing Lakota hunting grounds outside treaty boundaries. Mallory's exact words, the savages won't know they've been swindled until the rails are already laid. An elder named Maka slammed his fist against his knee. We knew the land thieves would come eventually. But this, forged documents, corrupt agents, how do we fight paper lies? You fight with truth, Elena said, holding up the journal. My brother documented everything. Names, dates, amounts. He even sketched copies of the forged deeds. This is evidence that could stand in any court. White man's courts protect white men, Chayton said from the shadows. The scarred warrior had been watching Elena with undisguised suspicion since her arrival. Why should we trust their justice? Because this time you'd have proof they can't ignore, Elena countered. And witnesses. My brother wasn't the only one who knew. He mentions others, clerks, surveyors, people who might testify if they knew someone was listening, or people Mallory has already silenced. Chayton shot back. Enough. Takoda raised his hand. The question is not whether we trust white justice. The question is whether this woman's word is true. He fixed Elena with a penetrating stare. Why did you bring this to us? You could have taken this journal to authorities in St. Gard. Lewis, why run to our lands? Elena's throat tightened. Because Mallory owns those authorities. The governor dines at his house. The marshal plays cards with him every Thursday. My brother tried going through proper channels. That's why he's dead. She paused. And because if Mallory's plans succeed, I won't let that happen. Takoda studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. You speak with a straight tongue. So what do we do? Winona asked. Wait for Mallory to attack? Defend this woman until he gets tired of trying? Mallory doesn't get tired, Elena said quietly. He gets even. She was right. Vincent Mallory arrived 4 days later with 30 armed men. They rode into view at dawn, a small army on horseback, rifles gleaming in the early light. Mallory himself rode at the front on a black stallion, dressed like he was attending a business meeting rather than invading Lakota Territory. Even from a distance, Elena could see his cold smile. The entire village mobilized. Warriors grabbed weapons. Women gathered children into lodges. Takoda walked out to meet the railroad tycoon, with Chayton and 6 warriors flanking him. Elena stood behind him, refusing to hide despite Winona's protests. Mallory dismounted 50 yards from the village edge. His eyes found Elena immediately. There you are, my dear. He called out, his voice smooth as poison honey. You've led us on quite the chase. I'm not going back with you, Vincent, Elena said. Of course you are. Mallory's smile never wavered. You're confused, distressed. The wedding was too much pressure, and you had a moment of panic. Completely understandable, but it's time to come home now. She has claimed sanctuary, Takoda said. She remains under my protection. Mallory's gaze shifted to the chief, and his smile took on a sharper edge. Chief Takoda, I've heard impressive things about you. Reasonable man. He gestured to his men. I brought a gift to show my respect for your hospitality. $5,000 in gold coin for the trouble my fiancé has caused you. We do not want your gold. 10,000 then. Mallory's voice remained pleasant, but something dangerous glinted in his eyes. Surely you understand business, Chief. Everyone has a price. Not everyone. Takoda's voice was ice. The woman stays. For the first time, Mallory's smile slipped. I'm trying to be civilized about this, but make no mistake, Elena belongs to me. If you refuse to return her, you're committing an act of theft, possibly even kidnapping. The United States Army might take an interest in tribes who harbor fugitives. Is that a threat? Chayton stepped forward, his hand on his knife. It's a consequence, Mallory said. I have friends in Washington, friends who decide where Army forts get built, friends who approve land treaties or revoke them. His eyes locked on Takoda. I would hate for this territory to become a point of federal concern. The air crackled with tension. Elena saw Takoda's warriors tighten their grips on their weapons. Mallory's men did the same. One wrong word, and blood would spill. You threaten war over one woman? Takoda asked. I'm reclaiming stolen property, Mallory corrected. What happens after that is entirely up to you. Elena couldn't stay silent anymore. Tell him the truth, Vincent. Tell him about the forged land deeds. Tell him about Daniel. Mallory's expression finally cracked, just for a second, but Elena saw the rage beneath. Your brother was careless with his horse. A tragedy, nothing more. He found your ledgers. He knew what you were planning. He knew nothing, Mallory snapped. Then, catching himself, he smoothed his expression back into that terrible smile. You're hysterical, Elena. Grief has clouded your judgment. Marcus Webb had been standing behind Mallory, silent until now. But Elena saw something change in his face. A flicker of doubt, of recognition. He'd heard the certainty in her voice, the specificity. He was starting to believe her. Takoda raised his hand before the situation could explode further. You have my answer, Mallory. The woman stays. If you attempt to take her by force, my warriors will respond. Mallory stared at the chief for a long, terrible moment. Then he smiled. A real smile this time, full of malice. Very well, he said softly. We'll do this the hard way. He turned and mounted his horse. As he rode away, he called back over his shoulder. I'll return in 3 days with enough men to burn this village to ash. Enjoy your sanctuary while it lasts, Elena. It won't be long. As Mallory's men disappeared over the horizon, Winona moved beside Elena. He means it. I know, Elena whispered. Shaitan turned to his father. We should prepare for battle. But Takoda was looking at Elena with new understanding. Or we prepare a different kind of fight, one that requires courage instead of bullets. What do you mean? Elena asked. We take that journal to the army fort at Randall, 40 miles east. If we can convince their commander before Mallory returns, he'll kill us on the road, Chayton interrupted. His men will be watching every route. Then we make sure they don't catch us, Winona said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Small group, fast horses. We travel at night. Takoda nodded slowly. You would go? I would, Winona said. As would I, Shaitan added, though his eyes remained on Elena. Someone needs to make sure she doesn't run again. Elena met his challenging stare. I won't run, not from this. Takoda looked at his daughter, then at his finest warrior, then at the white woman who had brought war to his doorstep, and possibly the weapon to prevent it. Then we leave tonight, he said, before Mallory knows what we're planning. But as the sun set that evening, and Elena prepared for the journey, she spotted something that made her blood freeze. Marcus Webb stood at the edge of the camp, alone. He'd returned without Mallory, and he was asking to speak with Chief Takoda. Whatever he'd come to say, Elena knew it would change everything. Marcus Webb stood in Chief Takoda's lodge, hat in hand, looking like a man who just made the hardest decision of his life. I need to tell you what Mallory's planning, he said. And I need you to believe I'm telling the truth. Chayton's hand moved to his knife. Why should we trust anything you say? You hunt for him. I did hunt for him, Marcus corrected. Past tense. He looked at Elena. When you mentioned your brother's name, Daniel Hartwell, something clicked. I met him once. Good, man. Smart. He asked me questions about land surveys I was running for Mallory, questions that made me uncomfortable. Marcus's jaw tightened. 2 weeks later, I heard he died. Mallory told me it was an accident, but the timing felt wrong. I didn't want to believe it, so I didn't ask questions. And now, Takoda asked, now I've seen the fear in her eyes when she looks at him. Now I've watched Mallory threaten to burn your village for one woman. Marcus met the chief's gaze. I've done things I'm not proud of, tracked people who didn't deserve it, looked the other way when I should have spoken up. But I won't be part of a massacre. What massacre? Winona demanded. Marcus took a breath. Mallory's not coming back in 3 days with men to negotiate. He's coming back with 100 hired guns, maybe more. His plan is to attack at dawn, kill as many of your people as possible, and make sure Elena dies in the crossfire. He paused. Then he'll claim the Lakota killed her, that you're harboring murderers. He'll use it to justify bringing in federal troops to pacify the region. Once the army's involved, he can seize the land under emergency provisions. The lodge went silent. He would murder his own bride? Winona asked, horrified. She's not his bride, Marcus said. She's a witness, the only person alive who knows what's in that journal. His eyes found Elena. He was never going to let you live, even if you'd gone through with the wedding. You just didn't know it yet. Elena felt cold. She'd known Vincent was capable of murder. Daniel proved that. But hearing it laid out so plainly made it real in a way that turned her stomach. Why tell us this? Chayton asked, still suspicious. What do you gain? Nothing, Marcus said. I lose everything. Mallory pays me well, but I can't. He stopped, searching for words. I grew up poor in Tennessee. My family lost our land to men like Mallory, men who used lawyers and contracts to steal what they couldn't take by force. I swore I'd never be that powerless again. He looked at his hands. I can't change what I've done, but maybe I can stop what's coming. Takoda studied the tracker for a long moment. You risk your life bringing this warning. Mallory will know I'm gone by morning. He'll figure out where I went. Marcus's smile was grim. So yeah, I'm a dead man either way. Might as well die doing something right. Elena spoke up. If we can reach Fort Randall with the journal before Mallory attacks. You won't make it, Marcus interrupted. Mallory's got men watching every trail between here and the fort. The moment you leave this village, they'll know. Then we travel at night, Winona said. Off the trails. 40 miles through Dakota Territory in the dark? Marcus shook his head. You'll break a horse's leg in the first 5 miles. So what do you suggest? Chayton challenged. Marcus thought for a moment. There's a canyon route. Narrow, dangerous, but it cuts the distance to 30 miles and comes out behind the fort. Mallory's men won't expect it because it's almost impossible to navigate without a guide. He paused. I know that canyon. I can get you through. And we're supposed to trust you'll lead us true instead of into an ambush? Chayton demanded. You got a better option? The two men stared at each other. Finally, Takoda spoke. If Marcus Webb wanted us dead, he could have brought Mallory's men with him tonight. He came alone, unarmed, knowing we might kill him for what he's done. The chief nodded slowly. I believe his words are true. Chayton looked unhappy but didn't argue. Winona moved to the map drawn on deerskin that showed the territory. If we leave before midnight, travel fast, we could reach the fort by tomorrow evening. Mallory's attack comes at dawn the day after, Marcus said. That gives you maybe 12 hours to convince the fort commander and get soldiers back here. It's not enough time, Chayton said. It's the only time we have, Elena replied. They left at midnight. The group was small by necessity. Elena, Marcus, Winona, Chayton, and 3 other warriors. Akacheta, a young fighter eager to prove himself. Takoda's nephew Chaska, quiet but deadly with the bow. And Mato, an older warrior whose experience steadied the younger men. Chief Takoda stood with his hand on Winona's shoulder as they prepared to depart. If you do not return by dawn tomorrow, I will assume you have failed. I will prepare our people for battle. We won't fail, Winona promised. Elena secured the journal in a leather pouch at her waist. She sewn it into a waterproof wrap Daniel had used for his important documents. It was strange. This small book now held the fate of so many people. They rode north first, a misdirection in case Mallory's scouts were watching. Then Marcus led them east into broken country, where the land turned harsh and unforgiving. The canyon he'd mentioned appeared after 3 hours of hard riding. A slash in the earth so narrow the horses had to move single file. Stay close, Marcus called back. One wrong turn in here and you're lost for days. The canyon walls rose on either side, blocking out the stars. The darkness was absolute. They moved by feel and trust, letting the horses pick their way through the rocks. They were 2 hours into the canyon when Akacheta, riding rear guard, whispered urgently in Lakota. Chayton translated, riders behind us, at least 6. Elena's heart sank. How did they find us so fast? Marcus cursed under his breath. Mallory must have had more scouts than I thought. Or he stopped. Or what? Winona demanded. Or he knew about this route and was waiting for us to use it. Marcus's voice was tight. Either way, they're coming. And in this canyon, there's no room to fight. Then we run, Chayton said. They urged the horses faster, but the terrain was treacherous. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. Hoofbeats echoing off stone, men shouting to each other. Then gunfire cracked through the darkness. A bullet sparked off the canyon wall inches from Elena's head. She ducked low over her horse's neck as Chayton returned fire. The muzzle flashed briefly, illuminating the narrow passage. There's a widening ahead, Marcus shouted. A quarter mile. We can make a stand there. We'll be trapped, Mato called back. We're already trapped, Marcus countered. At least there we can see what we're shooting at. They burst into the widening, a natural bowl in the canyon perhaps 50 feet across. The riders wheeled their horses around as their pursuers emerged from the passage. 7 men, heavily armed, led by a familiar face that made Elena's blood freeze. Silas Kane, Mallory's head of security, a man known for solving problems with bullets. Well now, Kane said, his voice carrying across the space. Mister, Mallory said you tried something stupid. Looks like he was right. His eyes found Marcus. And you. He's real disappointed in you, Webb. Thought you were smarter than this. Smart enough to see what he really is, Marcus replied, his rifle trained on Kane. Kane laughed. Noble. I respect that. Won't stop me from killing you, but I respect it. His gaze shifted to Elena. Miss Hartwell, you've caused a lot of trouble. Mr. Mallory wants you back alive if possible. The rest of these folks, well, they're negotiable. We're not going anywhere with you, Elena said. That's what I figured you'd say. Kane raised his hand, and his men spread out surrounding the group. So here's what's going to happen. You give me that journal, and I'll make this quick and painless. You refuse, and we do this the hard way. Chayton's response was to raise his rifle. The canyon erupted in gunfire. In the chaos that followed, Elena saw Dakota fall from his horse, saw Maddo take a bullet to the shoulder. Marcus fired twice, dropping one of Kane's men. Winona's rifle barked, then barked again, but they were outnumbered and pinned down. Elena made a decision. She pulled her horse toward a gap in the canyon wall, a crack barely wide enough for a horse to squeeze through. Elena, no! Chayton shouted, but she was already moving. The journal pressed against her chest, Kane's men turning to follow her into the darkness. The crack in the canyon wall led to a maze of passages so narrow, Elena had to dismount and lead her horse by the reins. Behind her, she heard Kane's men shouting, their voices echoing off stone. A gunshot rang out, but the bullet ricocheted harmlessly in the confined space. She stumbled forward in absolute darkness, one hand on the rock wall, the other clutching the journal. The passage twisted and climbed, then suddenly opened into moonlight. Elena found herself on a rocky plateau overlooking the main canyon. Below, the firefight continued. She saw Chayton and Marcus using their horses as cover. Saw Winona dragging wounded Maddo behind a boulder. Two of Kane's men lay motionless. But Kane himself was advancing, and his remaining fighters had the high ground. Then Elena saw movement to her left. 3 riders emerging from another canyon passage, cutting off any escape route her group might have had. They were going to die unless she did something. Elena mounted her horse and rode hard across the plateau, deliberately staying visible in the moonlight. Kane saw her immediately. There, he shouted. After her. The woman has the journal. It worked. Kane and 4 of his men broke off the attack to pursue Elena, leaving only 2 to pin down her companions. The odds had just shifted. Elena urged her horse faster, the plateau narrowing into a trail that wound along the canyon rim. She had no idea where it led, only that she needed to draw Kane's men as far from her friends as possible. The trail descended sharply, switchbacking down the canyon wall. Elena's horse scrambled for footing on loose scree. Behind her, Kane's men were closing the distance. They were better riders, on fresher horses. A gunshot cracked past her ear. Another splintered a rock beside the trail. The path leveled out suddenly, leading into a dry riverbed studded with boulders. Elena wove between them, trying to make herself a harder target. Then her horse stumbled, just for a second, but it was enough. Kane's riders surrounded her. She pulled her horse to a stop, breathing hard, trapped in a circle of guns. Kane rolled forward, his smile triumphant. End of the line, Miss Hartwell. Give me the journal. No. I've got 5 guns pointed at you. You've got no way out. Elena's hand moved to the journal at her waist. Then you'll have to shoot me. And if you do, you'll never find where I've hidden it. Kane's smile faltered. You're bluffing. Am I? Elena held his gaze. You think I carried the only evidence against Mallory where you could just take it? I left it back in that canyon, hidden somewhere only I know. She was lying and gambling everything on one desperate play. Kill me, and it's lost forever. Mallory will never get his railroad. Kane studied her, uncertainty flickering across his face. Then he slowly lowered his gun. Fine, we'll do this different. Bring her. 2 men dismounted and grabbed Elena, dragging her from her horse. One of them started patting her down for the journal. Elena's heart hammered. In seconds, they'd find it. Then rifle fire erupted from the rocks above. Chayton and Marcus had followed, taking position on the high ground. One of Kane's men dropped. Another dove for cover. In the confusion, Elena twisted free and ran. Kane roared orders, his men returning fire. Elena sprinted for a cluster of boulders. As bullets kicked up dust around her feet, she dove behind the rocks just as Winona appeared beside her, bow in hand. "You're insane," Winona said, but she was smiling. Worked, didn't it? Above them, Chayton and Marcus laid down covering fire, while Chaska circled wide with his bow. Maddo was there too, one arm hanging useless but the other steady on his rifle. Only young Akacheta was missing, falling in the first ambush. But they were still outnumbered. Kane rallied his men for a charge. "Rush them! They can't shoot us all." He was right. In the open riverbed, there was no cover, no tactical advantage. Kane's men would overrun them through sheer numbers, then hoofbeats thundered from the north. A new group of riders crested the rise, but these weren't Mallory's men. Elena recognized the blue uniforms immediately. Army cavalry. At least 20 soldiers led by an officer on a white horse. Kane saw them too. His face went pale. "Fall back! Move!" But the cavalry was already surrounding them, rifles trained. The officer dismounted, a captain with hard eyes and a weathered face. "Drop your weapons," he ordered. "All of you." Kane's men hesitated, then complied. They had no choice. The captain approached Elena's group. "I'm Captain Hayes, out of Fort Randall. We've been tracking armed men in territory they've got no business being in." His eyes moved to Chayton and Winona. "Chief Takoda sent runners to the fort 3 days ago, warning about a railroad man making threats. We came to investigate." Elena's legs nearly gave out with relief. "Captain, I have evidence." Later, Hayes interrupted. "Right now I need to know who's shooting at who and why." Marcus stepped forward. "Name's Marcus Webb. I work for Vincent Mallory. These folks are trying to get to your fort with proof that Mallory's planning to seize Lakota land through fraud and force." Hayes' expression hardened. "Vincent Mallory? The railroad man?" "The same. Where's this proof?" Elena withdrew the journal. "Everything's documented here. Forged deeds, bribed officials, murder. My brother was Mallory's attorney. This is his evidence." Hayes took the journal, flipping through pages. His jaw tightened as he read. "This mentions Agent Harrison at the Federal Land Office." "I know Harrison. If these accusations are true," "They're true," Marcus said. "I've seen the forged documents myself. I helped survey some of the disputed land." Kane spat on the ground. "You're a traitor, Webb." "No," Marcus said quietly. "I'm finally doing something right." Hayes closed the journal. "I'll need to bring all of you to the fort. Statements will be taken. This journal will be examined by a legal officer. But if what's written here is accurate, Mallory's facing serious federal charges. He's also planning to attack Chief Takoda's village at dawn tomorrow," Elena said urgently, "with over 100 men. He's going to massacre them and blame it on us, claim they killed me." Hayes' expression turned to stone. "When tomorrow? Dawn, maybe 16 hours from now." The captain turned to his sergeant. "Ride back to the fort. Tell Colonel Morrison we need every available man mobilized and ready to ride before sunrise. Tell him it's a potential massacre situation." The sergeant saluted and galloped away. Hayes looked at Elena. "We'll get your statements on the way. But right now, we ride for the fort. Fast." He gestured to his men to secure Kane and his surviving fighters, and someone get the wounded medical attention. As they prepared to move out, Chayton approached Elena. "You led them away from us deliberately, drew their fire. I did what I had to. You could have been killed. So could you." Elena met his eyes. "You came after me anyway." Something shifted in Chayton's expression. Respect, maybe even admiration. "You fight like Lakota. Brave but reckless. Is that a compliment?" "I haven't decided yet." Despite everything, Elena smiled. They rode through the night, reaching Fort Randall just before dawn. The fort was already mobilizing, soldiers checking weapons, horses being saddled, supply wagons being loaded. Colonel Morrison met them in his office, a gray-haired veteran with sharp eyes. He read Daniel's journal in silence while Elena, Marcus, and Chayton gave their statements. Winona stayed close, translating when needed. Finally, Morrison set the journal down. This is damning evidence. Agent Harrison will be arrested. Mallory will face federal prosecution. He paused. But first we deal with this threatened attack. Can you reach the village in time? Elena asked. We'll have to. Morrison stood. I'm taking 80 men. We ride in 10 minutes. He looked at Elena. You'll stay here where it's safe. No, Elena said firmly. I'm coming with you. Miss Hartwell, those people are in danger because of me, because I brought this fight to them. I won't hide while they face it. Morrison started to argue, then saw the determination in her eyes. Fine, but you stay behind the lines when the shooting starts. If the shooting starts, Marcus corrected. When he sees federal troops, he might back down. Let's hope, Morrison said, because if he doesn't, this could turn into the bloodiest day Dakota Territory has ever seen. They rode out as the sun broke the horizon, 80 cavalry soldiers and one woman in buckskin carrying a journal that could destroy an empire. Elena prayed they reached Takoda's village in time. Behind them, locked in the fort stockade, Silas Kane watched them go and smiled. They didn't know Mallory had split his forces, that 50 men were attacking from the south while another group of 70 circled from the north. The village was already surrounded, and Mallory himself was waiting. They saw the smoke first, black columns rising against the morning sky. Faster, Colonel Morrison shouted, and the cavalry pushed their horses to a full gallop. Elena's heart hammered in her chest. They were too late. Mallory had already attacked. The village was burning. But as they crested the final ridge, Elena realized the smoke wasn't coming from lodges. It was coming from a line of wagons. Mallory's supply train, burning in a defensive perimeter. The village stood intact. Chief Takoda's warriors had formed a defensive ring around their home, using every bit of cover the landscape provided. Mallory's forces surrounded them from three sides, but they hadn't broken through. Bodies lay scattered across the ground, mostly Mallory's men. The Lakota were holding, but they were outnumbered 3-1. Morrison raised his hand, and the cavalry formed a battle line on the ridge. The sight of 80 federal soldiers stopped the fighting immediately. Mallory's men lowered their weapons, uncertain. Vincent Mallory himself sat on his black stallion at the center of his forces, dressed in an expensive suit now covered in dust. When he saw Elena riding with the soldiers, his face contorted with rage. That's far enough, Mallory, Morrison called out. By order of the United States Army, you and your men will lay down your weapons immediately. Mallory's laugh carried across the field. On what authority, Colonel? I'm defending myself against savage attackers. Liar, Elena shouted. You attacked them. The word of a hysterical woman against mine? Mallory's voice dripped contempt. I came here peacefully to retrieve my stolen fiancé. These Indians refused and opened fire. Morrison held up the journal. We have documented evidence of your crimes, Mallory. Fraud, bribery, conspiracy to commit murder. It's over. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Mallory's face. That journal is stolen property, inadmissible. Federal judges will decide that, Morrison replied. Right now you have a choice. Surrender peacefully or face charges of assaulting a federal protectorate. Mallory's jaw clenched. His hand moved toward his pistol. Then Chief Takoda rode forward from the village line, alone and unarmed. The gesture was so bold, so unexpected, that everyone froze. Enough blood has been spilled today, Takoda said, his voice carrying across the silent battlefield. Mallory, you came for the woman. You came for your honor. Very well. He gestured to Chayton, who rode forward to join his chief. Let us settle this the old way. Single combat. Your best warrior against mine. Winner takes everything. The woman, the journal, the dispute over land. Father, no, Winona called out from the village. But Takoda ignored her. His eyes remained locked on Mallory, unless you are afraid to fight your own battles. It was a calculated insult, delivered perfectly. Mallory's men were watching. His pride was on the line. If he refused, he'd look like a coward in front of everyone. Mallory's smile returned, sharp and cruel. Single combat? How quaint. He looked at his men. Who among you wants to kill a savage for double pay? A massive man stepped forward. Bull Garrett, a notorious brawler and killer. He stood 6.5 feet tall, arms thick as tree trunks, with a scarred face that told of 100 fights won. Chayton dismounted to face him. They were mismatched in size. Chayton lean and quick against Garrett's brute strength. The gathered forces formed a circle, soldiers and warriors alike, watching as the two men stripped to the waist and picked up their weapons. Garrett a long knife, Chayton a traditional war club. First blood or to the death? Morrison asked, trying to maintain some control. Death, Mallory said immediately. Chayton nodded. Agreed. The fight began. Garrett charged like a bull, relying on power and reach. Chayton moved like water, deflecting and dodging. The war club cracked against Garrett's ribs, drawing first blood, but Garrett's knife slashed across Chayton's shoulder, evening the score. They circled, both wounded now, both breathing hard. Garrett lunged again, and this time Chayton stepped inside his guard, bringing the war club up under Garrett's chin with devastating force. The big man's eyes rolled back. He crashed to the ground and didn't rise. Silence. Then Chayton raised his club in victory. The Lakota warriors erupted in cheers. Even some of Morrison's soldiers nodded with respect. Mallory's face went white with rage. He cheated. That wasn't. It was a fair fight, Morrison interrupted. By your own terms, Mallory, you've lost. Lost? Mallory's composure finally shattered completely. I haven't lost anything. He drew his pistol, aiming directly at Elena. She's mine. Everything is mine. Three things happened simultaneously. Marcus Webb, still on horseback, kicked his mount forward to block the shot. Winona's arrow flew from the village line, faster than thought. And Chayton threw his war club with perfect accuracy. The pistol fired the bullet, catching Marcus in the chest. He fell. The arrow took Mallory through the shoulder, spinning him sideways. The war club struck Mallory's gun hand, shattering bone. Mallory screamed, collapsing from his horse. His men stood frozen, guns half raised, surrounded by federal troops with rifles trained on them. Stand down, Morrison roared. All of you, stand down or be shot where you stand. One by one, Mallory's hired guns dropped their weapons. The fight was over. Elena ran to Marcus, who lay gasping in the dirt. She pressed her hands against the wound in his chest, trying to stop the bleeding. Stay with me. Please stay with me. Marcus coughed, blood on his lips. Did we win? Yes, Elena whispered. We won. Good. His eyes found hers. I'm sorry for everything I did. All those years you saved us, Elena said. You made it right. Marcus smiled faintly. Then his eyes closed, and he was gone. Elena knelt there, holding the hand of a man who'd found redemption at the cost of everything, and wept. 3 months later, the federal courthouse in St. Louis was packed. Vincent Mallory sat in chains as the judge read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. Fraud, bribery, conspiracy to commit murder, assault on federal protectorates. The sentence was 20 years hard labor. As they led him away, Mallory's eyes found Elena in the gallery. She stared back without fear. He'd taken her brother, but he hadn't taken her spirit. She'd won. Outside the courthouse, Chief Takoda waited with Winona and Chayton. The Lakota delegation had stayed for the entire trial, ensuring justice was served. It's done, Elena said. It is, Takoda agreed. Agent Harrison has also been sentenced. The forged deeds have been destroyed. Our land is safe. What will you do now? Winona asked Elena. Elena had thought about this question for weeks. She could return to St. Louis society, rebuild her life among her own people. But when she looked at Chayton, at the man who'd risk everything to protect her, she knew her answer. I'd like to come home, she said, if you'll have me. Chayton's stern face softened into something that might have been joy. The council is already approved, if you wish it. I do. They were married a month later in a ceremony that honored both Lakota and Christian traditions. Elena wore buckskin decorated with beads that Winona had spent weeks making. Chayton wore his finest regalia, feathers earned in battle. The railroad eventually came to Dakota Territory, but on terms negotiated fairly, with Lakota consent and partnership. The tribe received fair payment and a voice in how the land was used. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. A statue was erected at the new railroad station, a marker honoring Marcus Webb, tracker-turned hero, who died protecting the people he'd once hunted. And sometimes in the quiet evenings, Elena would take out her brother's journal and read his words, remembering the man who'd started this journey with his courage to seek truth. Daniel had died for justice. Marcus had died for redemption. But Elena had lived to see honor triumph over greed, courage overcome cruelty, and love bridge the divide between two worlds. She'd run from a wedding to save her life, and in running, she'd found something worth living for.